Okay, and we're live. Welcome back to our eighth now Finding Her Voice podcast. A podcast by women who love film about the women who make film. Sorry, I guess, first of all, for last month's technical difficulties on my hand regarding our film noir podcast. I'm going to still try to get it up into the archives, but all of my computers are screwing up on me, and essentially my patience really just ended. So we'll have a better time with this one because this month we're going to be talking about holiday films, and we can't get upset at holiday related things, right? And once again, I am joined by my co-hosts, editor-in-chief Gabrielle Bondi, and fellow television film writer, oftentimes book writer, AJ. So, yeah, welcome back, guys. Thank you for joining me. We're about at the end of the year, so that's fun. I'm sure.
Get this year over with.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I think this podcast has been one of the few things that haven't sucked for me this year. For my own personal world, obviously not to the world at large. What kind of ego would that be? But yeah, so this month we are on the holiday theme because that's everything that's going on elsewhere. And we're talking about Penny Marshall's Big and Nancy Meyer's The Holiday, both of which I think all of us had seen before, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So we're coming at this one a little bit differently than we've come at the past, with fresh eyes, because I think holiday films kind of offer this idea of comfort, and you're watching things that you've loved for years now. So it's a bit of a different perspective than on the films that we really dug deep and kind of learned new things about films and filmmakers. But before we get to all that, I wanted to first ask my beginning question, which is, what was your favorite film of 2016 directed by a female director? And this could be a new film or an old film that you just came across for the first time. Gabi?
Yeah, well, actually, I was thinking of new films, and Toni Erdmann and Things to Come are two films that I really love this year, and they actually made my top 10 movies of the year. Toni Erdmann's ranked first. It's so insane. I rewatched it recently after seeing it in New York a few months ago, and I just can't believe that movie. It's so weird, but it's I don't know, the humor and the insane scenarios and the way people react in the movie. I think it's kind of all brilliant. And Mara Nadei directed it. And yeah, definitely, I think it's totally unique and probably a cinematic experience I won't soon forget.
Yeah, that's been one that's been on my watch list for a while now, and I just haven't gotten around to it. I wanted to by the end of the year. I'm starting to wonder how likely that's going to be. Just for my attention span has been fleeting these days. But it looks really interesting, and it looks like nothing else that was released this year. So
yeah,
I'm excited.
It's so weird.
Yeah, it seems it. AJ, what about you?
Well, mine is kind of in the same vein of a cinematic experience. Andrea Arnold's American Honey was fantastic. I think it was not what I was expecting in terms of storytelling, because the narrative is kind of loose and a bit experimental, I guess you could say. But visually, it's really, really stunning. And I think that the lead, it was actually her debut, her film debut. Sasha Lane was fantastic as Star, and I think it was a nice take on a coming of age kind of drama, but it didn't take itself too seriously, and I just really enjoyed it. I think it was one of my favorite films in general, not just directed by a woman of the year.
I've been meaning to see that because I love Andrea Arnold's direction, and I basically haven't had a chance to see it. But if you see if you've seen Transparent's third season, she directs a few episodes, and those are my favorite episodes of that season, especially when she does the flashback scenes.
Yeah.
They're so well done. So yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea that she directed some of Transparent.
Yeah, I had no idea either.
Yeah, that's really awesome. That makes me want to watch the show more.
Watch it. It's good.
But I agree. I really loved American Honey. I think it's a really worthwhile experience, and I've been trying to explain it to people, and it's kind of like Mommy mixed with Spring Breakers, but if people liked Spring Breakers more. Like, it's a weird cross of films. So for the sake of the new film, like a newly released film, I think it was probably The Edge of 17.
So good.
Oh yeah, that's so good.
Well, and this would have been a great one to talk about a couple months ago when we were doing our high school age teenage girl geared podcast. But yeah, I love it because it kind of redefines the idea of a coming of age story and a teenage coming of age story by focusing it on a female character. And I just thought her ups and downs were remarkably captured. I think it was very real, and it really touched a part of me that understood what it was like to be a teenage girl and all of her insecurities and like ridiculous humor that sometimes was a little too mean because she like was trying to make herself feel better. And I thought it touched on a lot of things that resonated with anybody who's gone through her experiences. And I'm really excited to see what that director does. I think it was just wonderful, and it really had a clear tone of voice. And and then for a film that I just hadn't seen before, directed by a woman, it was Desperately Seeking Susan.
Oh, I love it.
Okay, so I'd never seen it, and I watched it for the first time this year, and I thought it was really distinctive and like telling of the time period that it was filmed in, and it was just vibrant and fun, and it really kept your attention. And yeah, I think that it's really risen in the ranks in terms of films that I enjoy and that I would love to watch again. And I'd love to discover more of that filmmaker too. And I think what's interesting is all this talking about all the films that came out this year is the fact that there were so many good films directed by women that came out this year. And so people should really, really, really just go and like support those films, because on one hand you have Toni Erdmann, American Honey, and The Edge of 17, all of which couldn't be any like more different than each other. So the fact that I just have so many issues with Hollywood, but I've done this podcast before. To go and kind of dive back into the films we picked for this month, The Holiday and Big, I guess to ask what were your general thoughts, or I guess because we've seen them before, maybe why did you love the idea of revisiting these films?
I definitely, love both films. I saw them when I was younger. So I saw Big as a kid. It took me a few years to see all of Big, because I kept catching it like on certain scenes, and everyone knows like the F.E.O. Schwartz piano scene is like, super famous from it. So then I finally like watched the whole thing, and I really loved it. And so I kind of rewatching it now, because when you're a kid, or even when you're like, even when I was younger, I never really looked at who was directing it or, paid attention to those details. So when you're rewatching it for something like this podcast, it's kind of interesting the stuff you catch, I guess. I don't know that it's not I guess, I don't know if it's fair to say this, but it feels like a little bit more sentimental than you would have expected. And then even with The Holiday, we're all really familiar with Nancy Meyers films. But even with that, I was just kind of paying more attention to the women, like Cameron Diaz's character and Kate Winslet's characters, and how they are and how they react to situations. And it's really, I'm sorry if I'm not sounding so eloquent right now, but
no.
We're all in the Christmas days.
Kind of. I mean, like, yeah, apologies in advance. I think we've all had very busy weeks. And I got home from shopping 15 minutes before I started this podcast, so like we understand. But yeah, no, I agree, and I think the sentimentality of it is really true. I think it might, like, especially to Big, where I think just the time that it was released, it was bigger on that kind of sentimentality. I think it was trying to be a family film, and I think to be a family film, then you kind of go a bit broader in emotions, to kind of appeal to both parents and kids and anybody in between. So yeah, no, I see that. And The Holiday, for me, I kind of loved instantly when I originally saw it, which must have been close to 10 years ago, I guess, which is kind of alarming to me. But and it's a movie that I've grown to love more since seeing it. And I don't know if that's the case with you too, for either Big or The Holiday, but like when I first saw it, I kind of just enjoyed it, probably because I had a crush on Jude Law. And now I watch it, and like I'm a genuine lover of romantic comedies, and not just romantic comedies that, like, turn the genre on its head, like Obvious Child. Like, I genuinely love the ridiculous, like, three-structure romantic comedy where the guy is chasing the girl over the bridge to profess his love for her. Like, love it. I'm a sap. And I love that The Holiday plays into those typical trappings while also reversing them. It's Cameron Diaz that kind of runs back at the end. And I think that's so interesting. And men are portrayed as like really sensitive human beings in The Holiday. And so I love that these are two films that, like, you don't look back on and kind of wonder, why on earth did I love that film? You instead look back and you're like, oh, I loved it for these reasons when I was a kid, or I guess a teenager, Christ, for The Holiday. But like, you also are like, but this is why I love them now, and it's completely separate to the then. And I think that's really interesting when, and I feel like people don't give films like The Holiday or Big the credit they deserve for being those kind of films that have a longevity to them, because they're in the genres of holiday film or romantic comedy. So I just kind of like spun out with that question. But yeah, so essentially, to bring it back in, do you have different feelings, do you think, watching it now than when you were a kid?
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. I had seen The Holiday maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and just kind of took it at face value. It's a romantic comedy. It's, a holiday movie. I didn't think much of it, besides the fact I was like, oh, this is a little bit long, and like the pacing, and because I just couldn't sit still. I was a teenager. I wanted to get the film over with. But looking back on it, and the same thing with Big, I had only seen Big this year. I think this year was the first time that I had seen it. But revisiting them, I kind of took it as character studies for both films. With young Tom Hanks everybody loves Tom Hanks, and then young Tom Hanks is just fantastic. But the complexities of an adolescent, you don't really see that necessarily so much in films, but seeing how there are emotional complexities with a 12, 13-year-old boy, and kind of navigating adulthood. And I think, I don't know if it's a stretch to say this, but I feel like at times we all feel like we're still a middle schooler trapped in an adult body, and we're not sure what's going on, and we're trying to kind of figure things out. And I think it's really interesting to have that be shown in a film that still is quirky and enjoyable, but there is that kind of sentimentality, and there's a depth to it that's something bigger. And then with The Holiday, like you mentioned, the way that men and women within the film are portrayed, I think we've all come to know Cameron Diaz, especially in the 2000s, and as she's gone into more roles more recently, it's kind of become this type A, like California girl, that she gets typecast as, especially in The Other Woman that was released a few years ago. She's very like head on her shoulders, like business oriented. And in this film, you see her as that. But there is that moment where she kind of buckles, and you see that unfold. And I really like seeing Jack Black as a romantic lead. I think it's really interesting.
Me too.
That he went against it, and you would think that it would be so awkward and so weird, but it's believable, and I think it's very, very sweet without being cloying. His relationship with Kate Winslet's character within the film, it's adorable, and it's just nice to see it being flipped a little bit, but still believable, and It doesn't feel like it's shouting, "Look, it's Jack Black in a romantic comedy. Like, look at how weird and crazy this is." It's just, this is a real person.
Yeah,
it's kind of the believability of it. I really like.
That's actually one of my favorite Jack Black roles, because I think it tames him down just enough without completely like distinguishing, or not distinguishing. What word did I mean? I forget.
Extinguishing, like,
yes. Holy shit. I'm sick of words. I'm sick of writing today. Okay. But yeah, extinguishing like the spark that makes him so charismatic. But it allows him to be like the funny guy without having to be the funny character in the movie. Yeah. Like, I think there's a lot of humor to all of their situations. But yeah, I really enjoyed him in that film. I was actually like, I was so excited about that pairing because I thought they were so charming together. More so almost than I was of Cameron Diaz and Jude Law, because I thought they were almost more typical. Yeah, I was like, of course Barbie and Ken are going to end up together.
But there is a scene in The Holiday that when I rewatched it the other night, that I felt like would not have been in the movie if it wasn't like a female writer director, because it's the one where Jude Law and Cameron Diaz are in that tent with his daughters, and it's like it's kind of a lengthy scene, and the little girl is like, rubbing off her lipstick and putting it on herself, and it's so small, it's so intimate, and it just really shows the connection that they all have together. And I don't know, for once, like, I actually really like took in that scene. And just kind of marveled at how beautiful it looked, because it was really kind of enchanting. And
I can still see it. I can still see it in my head right now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It stays with you. And I agree. I don't think it would have been a scene that we would have seen in a film had it been directed by a male director, because I think it's something that women catch on to or have experienced personally. And it's such a small moment, and I think the ability to show those small moments can make a film like The Holiday soar. Like, I think it makes it better than it is, because it makes it feel more human and, again, more relatable. That's such a good scene, and I didn't even think about it before we started this. But that's such a wonderful scene.
I know. I was like, I never really paid attention to it before until not last night, but the night before. I was like, wow, this scene's beautiful.
Yeah. And like you said, I think enchanting is such a good way of putting it. You feel like you're in their own little world at that point too. Like, you're under the tent also, like, and it really draws you in. And like, not to dismiss my Barbie and Ken comment was so off the cuff. I did enjoy. I thought the whole idea of starting a relationship with two daughters, and it, like, that really turns on the head the idea that it's just this handsome single guy who she happens to meet while on a vacation perfectly. I think that's wonderful, but I think it's such different charms of both relationships in the film, and so much charm between both that you end up buying the fact that they would want to be together after a week.
Make that big life decision.
It's like I just don't care. Again, I'm such a sucker for these films, and it's like I'm gonna throw all like reality out the window and just no. Just got a dirty look from the boyfriend. But so do you think, like, is The Holiday a film that you think you'd like watch more than Big as you got older, or do you think Big is always going to be a staple in your like or like, I guess, Gabi, because you've been reading this, I mean, not reading this, you've been watching this since you were younger, right? Like, this has been a film that's kind of been in your holiday cycle for a while now.
Mhm.
So I'm curious if, like, compared to AJ, who only started watching this, if you're gonna want to keep watching it year round, or if it doesn't have that nostalgic pull for you.
I like watching Big. I think I watch The Holiday more though. And that's mostly because I live with my family and my brother hates Big. Like a lot.
Okay.
That honestly is the truth. And it's like whenever I put it on, he's just like, "Oh, I hate that movie," and then he just gives me shit, and I just don't want to hear it. So, yeah, but
No, I understand.
Yeah, it's just that's what happens when you have family members. But
yeah, no, I understand that in a sense. Definitely dictates what you can and can't watch.
But yeah, I mean, I like to revisit Big just because I think it's such a charming story, and it's, and it, I love, those moments in it. Like I always was, I love the FAO Schwartz scene. I mean, it's my favorite, and I think it's really connected to me growing up and going to FAO Schwartz and playing on the piano keys. Because I would literally spend like a half hour in the store doing that. Like playing chopsticks and then almost doing the splits and hurting myself. But yeah. So that's I think it's just that connection to real life, and The Holiday is just like a movie that, when I was younger, my mom dragged me to because she loves rom-coms and so do I. And she always likes to watch it every year, and I like watching it with her. So,
yeah. I think for the same reason, Big isn't necessarily on my list that I would be like revisiting necessarily during the holidays, but I think to revisit it when you want kind of a warm, charming film, like a feel-good movie, it's definitely something that I would be rewatching. The Holiday, on the other hand, I think that, I would be revisiting it around this time just because I have been for so long. And as someone who hasn't seen like Love Actually or the big holiday like rom-coms, I think having The Holiday in kind of that repertoire, along with some goofier ones like Elf or, Home Alone, kind of having that in the holiday collection is really nice. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed Big, apart from it being kind of a Christmassy film. Just for the story, I think it's really nice.
Yeah. No, I think because I also saw Big only in pieces for the longest time before I saw all of it, it didn't like resonate with me as much. But like if it's ever on TV, it's a film I'll stop and I'll watch.
Yeah.
Every season, but like I won't probably go through the effort of like finding it and putting it on. Whereas The Holiday, I just genuinely find so charming and like love showing people who don't really love rom-coms but are into the spirit of the holiday and stuff like that. I mean the holiday season just to differentiate. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think The Holiday is one that I'll keep watching. Mainly again for the 100th time in this episode because I love rom-coms. And it's easy for me to watch.
But I do think that there's something about holidays and romance that like really resonates well, to everyone.
Oh, very much so. No, because I think it's like the whole idea of the magic of the season and something special happening in this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely agree. And I think people are kind of at a heightened emotional level to begin with, either due to stress or because there's a lot of family around or people are reconnecting. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And, it's why I kind of enjoy seeing these films also directed by women, because I think it strips a lot of the cynicism away from like, and I think that's really nice also because there's enough of that in the real world. And sometimes I just want to watch movies to escape it. So it kind of leads into a thought I wanted to, talk about a little bit, which is why these movies don't seem to be made anymore. Certainly not at this quality anymore, but like I generally don't feel like we see a lot of them, you know. And I think these kind of event seasonal movies used to be a little bit more popular than they are now.
I think maybe the audience has changed a little bit. There's a shift in focus, at least what I've noticed, of having kind of holiday films that are very sentimental into having holiday films that are over the top, like super comedic and kind of like the Seth Rogen-y kind of comedy where, you know, there's like The Night Before, an Office Christmas Party, and we're not getting that kind of emotional niceness that we used to. And it might be because, you know, the older people are getting older and there's like a less of a desire to feel connected to film through that medium, and we just want an escape from the badness, and we've kind of gone over the top with it.
Yeah.
At least that's what I've noticed.
No, that makes sense. I'm also wondering, do you think there's any relation to the fact that, you know, since we talk about it, a lot of holiday films does have their romantic element, and people do associate romantic films with a female audience. So is there any correlation, do you think, between Hollywood not thinking that they want a purely female audience with these holiday films because of the themes? Like, I don't know. Because, like, I'm sure there's also the fact that maybe they just don't make enough money. But I feel like they still try with other genres to make films over and over again and see if it sticks. And I'm just wondering if in this case, it's both a mix of the audience has changed. Clearly, we can see that from the box office and what people gravitate towards. But also, does Hollywood think it's the same thing with romantic comedies, where they're like, we don't want strictly a female audience? But I might be looking too deep. But I also think, you know, Hollywood sucks.
I always believed that, and still believe this, that Hollywood always underestimates the female audience, like always. And I don't know if they'll ever stop, because like whenever they realize that women come out, you know, in droves to see movies, it's like a headline. I'm like, why is it a headline? Like, this has been happening for years. I mean, like, women have nights out where they go to the movies, or you go with your mom. I mean, like, literally the men in my family never go to the movies. It's mostly it was my grandma, it was my mom, and then it was me. Like, so that's what I grew up with. So it just really is kind of crazy how, again, Hollywood just doesn't think we go, so they, you know, they focus their efforts on action and maybe like more male dominated kind of genres, and I mean, so now this Christmas, you know, we have Passengers, which is like, I don't even know what that is. And you know, instead of like an actual like nice Christmas movie or Christmas romance, because I even think like there's even less like of those Hallmark Christmas romance movies, unless I don't pay attention to that anymore. But I feel like even
I don't think
I feel like those have dwindled since, you know, in the last decade or so. And yeah, maybe because they don't make the money they want, but I don't really think it costs that much to make these rom-coms. So like,
if it does, they're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Like, if it costs that much, like, they can probably cut back on some aspect.
I don't think that there's necessarily like a desire to pull women in to see a film. It's always, okay, well, if we make this kind of female-centric film, or, you know, a more romantic film, they're always worried, well, how are you going to get the boys to come see it? And it's like, if it's a good film, people will go see it regardless.
Right.
I just, there's no concern to get women to come see movies, but there's always, when you're making something that you're concerned men won't go see, there's always that kind of emphasis on, well, what part of this movie can we cater to men also?
And and if we're in that point of view too, it means we're also underestimating male viewers.
Yeah,
Because we think that they're only going to come for explosions,
exactly. Yeah.
like in action. And I think that's also underestimating them. Like, I think that, obviously this is like wishful thinking, but once they stop thinking in terms of film, or thinking about film in terms of gender, and like thinking about, well, this one's for the boys and this one's for the girls, they'll probably get some better films out there because they're trying to target everyone instead of like a niche group of people. But yeah, no, I think it's ridiculous because you see, what is it, like Fast and the Furious, and it's like half the shocker, half the audience was women, or more than half of it was women. It was like a crazy amount of people, and look, that's a action film, which Hollywood seems to think that women don't like, but it also is diverse, and it has a lot of female characters in the leading roles, and it just goes to show that like Hollywood thinks that they're like paying attention to trends, but they're actually just like really ignoring what's right in front of them.
Exactly.
Which all goes to say that we want a holiday too.
Just put The Rock in a tender romance, and everyone will go. Like,
yeah,
that's all you need.
Everyone will go.
Everybody loves The Rock.
I know. Everyone will go.
Right?
Yeah.
In whatever, just cast him essentially.
Yeah, but
The Rock is my rock.
But one thing that I just thought of is, like, I remember, like, especially kind of growing up and watching rom-coms, like, that for the most part they would get panned by critics. And I mean, if we think about how, again, male-dominated film criticism is, I wonder if there were more female critics, would these films have gotten more of a boost?
Absolutely.
Critically.
I think without a doubt, because I even remember, because, you remember when it was like cool to not like quote unquote chick flicks? Like if you didn't like them and you were a girl, you were kind of cooler because like you didn't do that shit. And it's like, that just shows you how like pervasive that mentality is, the boys club mentality is. And it comes from film criticism in a sense. It comes from male voices being so domineering, from making the film to writing about the film. And I do think if women had more of a voice in film criticism, I do think films like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, The Holiday, What's Your Number, like these kind of silly on the surface rom-coms would have gotten more love. I do think that without a doubt, but I think because people don't like it because they're rom-coms, and that's what film critics base it on. They say that rom-coms aren't good, but it all boils down to the fact that the audience is also female, and it's about female characters, and there's just such an underlying hint of sexism in people who write like that, and people who automatically dismiss that genre, that it's just gross to hear about. But yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic point. Like, I absolutely agree that that's the case.
I mean, The Holiday is rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. And like, if you look at the first critics, the only critics who have a fresh rating for it are the females. The men are all rotten. And I just think that's crazy. Like, again.
Yeah, it's like, there's nothing to dislike about that film. Like, I'm sure people complained about it, maybe being predictable. But so are a lot of films, because films have been taking themes and story structure from each other for 100 years now. Like, people can guess a lot of times how films are going to end simply because we've seen films from the same vein before. And I think complaining about it only when it comes to romantic comedies is absurd, and purposely ignoring problems with other films, or like at least not championing them. I don't know. It's so annoying to me when people complain about that kind of thing. But yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and it happens on both ends. It's like, to be considered credible or to establish yourself as a female critic, you have to reject femininity on all levels to some extent to establish yourself. And then as a male critic, you're automatically kind of seen as more credible just because you are a man. then you have to continually reject femininity throughout your kind of criticism. And I know that we've seen it, especially last year with The Force Awakens. People were so mad about Rey. They were so upset because she was a woman. And it's like, if a man had been like, this is awesome and this is great and I like seeing a strong female character, I feel like people would get kind of defensive and angry about that. Because it's like, well, you need to just be like, it's wrong and a man should be there. And,
yeah, exactly. Like,
it's so twisted. It's just so twisted.
It's like, how are we ever going to relate to this film without a guy?
Exactly.
It's like, you're not going to relate to it at all because they're living in space.
Yeah.
And are like, okay, they're just like, shut up. This is where I just like throw things in anger.
Yeah.
Hear noises. I flip the table with my laptop on it. But yeah, essentially, sexism exists is I think what we have found ourselves on. And it's probably why people didn't like The Holiday, because there's really no reason not to like The Holiday. It's delightful and uplifting with a lot of great characters, really well built relationships, and just adorable settings too. I had an off topic kind of question, but if you had to choose between whose house to go to for The Holiday, whose would you choose? Because I totally would choose Kate Winslet's.
Yeah,
like, that's adorable. I don't want to be in this. Yeah, I would pick the cottage.
It's
Isn't
so
that
cute.
But like, is that what you'd pick, or does it just look cute? You know what I mean?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was such an obvious choice, but then I'm like, I guess most people like the sun and like being active. But yeah, that was one of my off-topic questions about the movie.
I think if I had to choose, I would choose Kate Winslet's character, Iris, her cottage to stay in, just because it is so different than Florida, where it's currently like 90 degrees in December.
Oh no!
Something kind of,
I think that's very different from
yeah.
myself and Gabi.
Yeah. Something kind of away from
I have snow.
I have not seen snow.
I have frozen snow.
Oh my god!
I really liked the scene in The Holiday where Kate Winslet's character and Jack Black's character, they're on the couch in Cameron Diaz's character Amanda in her house with the huge like floor to ceiling windows, and it was really expansive. It just looked really like visually appealing, and that's one thing that I really liked about the movie as well. Even though they were in two completely different settings and kind of two different, you would think that it would look different, like vastly different. There was still that warmth to both places, and it felt like it all flowed together. I didn't feel like I was like, okay, we're in the snow and we're in the sun and it looks like kind of two parts that came together. It seemed really cohesive, and like cuddly is the best word I can use to describe it. I really liked it.
It was like a postcard. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point, and I think again it shows like that beyond the story that there's more to these films than meets the eye. You know, there's like some really interesting artistry going into that too, which I think is dismissed as well for films like this and in this genre. It's just like it's watching something again that's comforting and like, you know, it kind of helps you de-stress. And I really, you know, love and need films like that. So I love them. Gosh, I think that covers everything I wanted to talk about in relation to these films, but I don't want to dominate the conversation. So is there anything you guys were thinking about? Or were we just kind of all just like really excited to watch them?
I was really excited to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like as if we needed an excuse.
Yeah. It was
it was exciting for me though because I got to see Big from beginning to end for the first time, and I had really only seen it on whatever scene it was on TV up until. So I guess that's it for these two. I'm going to end on a different question, but first I want to make sure that everybody listening, make sure to check us out on Twitter at TYF Official. We also have a Twitter page now that I'll be better about updating, Finding Her Voice. I'm at Allison AJ, and where can we find the two of you?
I'm at Gabriella Dell on Twitter.
And I'm at AJ_Caulfield, CAULFIELD.
Great. And you can also find us on Facebook. We're at theinfos.com. We're on Instagram. We have a bunch of other really great podcasts to check out. Find us on Shout Engine. We're on iTunes. There's a lot of places to find us, and just make sure to kind of join in the conversation. For January, we're going to be talking about, I guess, like new discoveries for the whole New Year resolution theme. I know we've discussed Under the Tuscan Sun and things to come. We may add, subtract. We had a lot of ideas kind of in our little chat the other day. So I think it could definitely be a fun month. So make sure to watch and, again, talk along with us, discuss with us what's going on in those films. But to end it, I kind of just want to look forward, since, again, we're coming towards the end of the year, and talk about in the next year what you're, looking to do, or what you're hoping to see, I guess, regarding the female perspective, I guess, in film criticism, your own perspective, essentially what are your thoughts moving forward in this type of theme?
I'm hoping to kind of do the 52 films like directed by women challenge, which I really want to do it. I'm so bad about doing any kind of challenge, like at all. So this, that's my New Year's resolution, is to like do and complete a challenge. And so I'm thinking that that's what I want to do. And plus I just in general want to seek out more female directed movies, because especially older ones that I've missed or I've seen but I haven't watched it in a very long time, just to kind of revisit and kind of like study them a bit and see the kind of stories they're telling and all that.
I completely agree. That was one of my resolutions. I was talking about it with a couple of my other writer friends, and I was like, I really want to do the 52 films by women challenge. So I'm going to try to do that, because watching all these female directed films this year has not only been a very eye-opening experience, and I've loved discussing them. I think it's changed the way I view film in general, and it's made me more aware of who the director is, and if it is a male or a female, and kind of how would it be different if it was flipped. So I think it's a really good thing to do, to keep watching films directed by females. But in terms of content that I would really like to see, I know you had talked about genre films in another podcast. I would love to see more in 2017 kind of female directed genre films, because they're so good. And I just want more. I don't know if that's great.
I agree. Yeah, I guess first, I mean, God, I'm hoping I get to the 52 in the next couple of days. I'm close. I'm really close, but because of the end of the year push of because I with voting and everything, I tend to just go through all of this year's, and the fact is that this year didn't have a ton of female directed films, so I kind of I'm playing catch up essentially, but I'm hoping I'll get to them by the end of the year, and I hope next year I can do more than the 52, because I consume a lot of films and I talk a lot about, and I kind of am disappointed that I talk so much about it, but I'm kind of like, just doing just under the 52. Like, I feel like for how much I talk about it and how much I watch, I should probably be doing more. But also in terms of a content type angle of it, as a writer, I've seen a lot of people do the thing where they like tweet out a piece of work that they really love, and I think I'm going to try to do that with female writers, either daily or weekly, tweet out, and maybe do it through the Finding Her Voice Twitter as well. Just tweet out some piece of film criticism, film analysis that really spoke to us as a whole, and kind of just, support it openly, and try to celebrate female voices, not just but also writing about it. And Gabi, when you were just talking about, trying to watch more and having a hard time staying to the challenge, I was also thinking maybe through our Twitter, we could every week tweet out like, here's a film you should watch this week and here's where to find it, and make it easier for people to and not have to search and kind of get annoyed by going through Netflix and like fed up and just picking whatever they find first, which I tend to do a lot, and having like an active ready list for them to make. So I'm excited, I guess, for the possibilities that something like this brings for next year. I'm excited to see if, again, I think celebrating voices, both making and writing about film, is really important, and I'm excited to do that next year. But let's see how it all plays out, because my organizational skills have been shit. So that's another personal goal. More on that on my personal Twitter. But so thank you all again so much for joining us. It's been a great year doing this. We've been doing it since May, and it's been a lot of fun. And I'm really excited to see what 2017 brings us for this in particular. Not much else.
I agree.
This is why we have movies, to escape real life issues. But so make sure to join us next month. We'll tweet out what films we're going to watch officially. And thank you again, and can't wait to talk about film more next month. Have a good one. Happy holidays.